Hello, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is Apoorva and I'm from India.
So, can you tell a little bit how you learned English because you speak it so well? What was it like for you, and when did you start learning it?
Thank you so much for that kind compliment. I started learning as a part of the basic curriculum in school when I was 3 years old. When I started play school, that's when I started learning the alphabets. And in India, it's quite common to go to an English medium school as we were a colonized country. So I think 50 to 60% of Indians speak English very well. So that's how I started learning and have been speaking it ever since.
And what were your classes like? What did you do? Did you get to speak, or was it a focus on grammar more? Because in some countries there is a large focus on grammar.
I think there was a lot of focus on grammar, yes. Initially, we were just taught the basic syntax of writing basic English, but eventually there was the emphasis on writing well increased as you went to higher grades in school, and eventually spoken English in say middle school or say higher what do you call it, high school or higher secondary school. That's when the emphasis on spoken English gets polished. I went to a convent, and in fact it's a kind of a joke now, but at that time in India it was a common practices in convents to fine or to penalize their students if they were found to be speaking in any other language except in English. We were only allowed to speak in our mother tongue either during the recess or in the mother tongue language class or something. Other than that, it was compulsory for you to speak in English.
And did they correct your mistakes when you spoke with each other? Because you would obviously make mistakes.
Yes, they did. Not so much when we spoke to each other because there may not have been a teacher around at that time, but definitely in class there was, I think, an overemphasis on pronunciation. So, and whatever the teacher thought was correct was correct. So it was tortoise and not tortoise. I remember because I was, corrected for that. I think initially I looked upon speaking in English as something that was very respectable because I did not come from an English speaking household. Even though my parents are fairly fluent in English, they have also studied English. Their medium of writing has often been English, but English is not spoken at home in my house, and that made a big difference. I think I was a little shy and underconfident until, like I said, middle school when I started speaking out and got a lot of encouragement from teachers also. But yes, even in India, it's imbued with a certain sense of superiority if you can speak English well. And it can sometimes also lead to a lot of students ignoring their respective languages from their countries. I think a lot of attention is not paid to that.
And are there homes in India where English is spoken as well?
Yeah, there most definitely. There are households where parents also speak in English, grandparents also speak in English. So I think it's there. And the grammar bit of it may differ from state to state because, as you know, languages are mellifluous and culture often finds its way to in the language. But yes, there are definitely homes where English is spoken at home as well.
And did you get to practice English outside your classroom as well? After you finish school,
yes.
did you feel confident using English outside the classroom?
So it's very funny that now I think over time, especially after my undergrad, because that was in literature and that renewed a passion for languages as well in me, and I think a newfound respect for my own language. But at that time, anything that had to be proper or any communication that was formal somehow assumed itself in English. Right? I mean, if you had to make a request to the principal or even while communicating with people outside of school where there were no rules, automatically I would try and speak to them in broken English. So yes, to answer your question, I did get a chance to speak to other people outside of school. In fact, in India, it's funny, now that you are asking me, I'm thinking back. that often when aunts and uncles meet you at social gatherings, rarely ever would you find them asking you the first question in Hindi or your native. It's often like, oh, what's your name? How are you doing in class? It's like the
It's
hep
all in
thing.
English.
It's at least the first question is in English. The conversation later might transgress, and it may continue in another language in Hindi. But initially, at least, how are you doing? Which grade are you in? Those are questions that are mostly in English.
And what did you find most difficult while learning English? Did you struggle with something in particular?
Yes, I think the grammar bit initially was a bit difficult for me, the pronouns, because it's different from how you speak Hindi. The syntax is not exactly the same. So as a child, I do remember, and even now, I think I mix up my articles sometimes. So in terms of written English, yes, nobody is perfect, and I don't think I've been able to completely wrap my head around what are the exact rules, because they keep changing from country to country and from culture to culture, from teacher to teacher also. So now I think after being a student and having studied in different colleges and higher educational institutions where English has been a medium for centuries, I feel sometimes it's just a matter of taste.
Can you tell about your traveling experiences? How did it affect your English skills?
So I have a very funny anecdote to recollect. I had just graduated in literature in English. That's how I would like to term it, because it was not just English literature. We studied a lot of literature from other languages, which was translated in English. So that's a difference. So I just completed that, and I was in London for my master's at the School of Oriental and African Studies, and I was at a bed and breakfast trying to understand what the gentleman across the counter, the manager, was trying to say, and I just couldn't follow his accent. Like, I kept on saying, "I beg your pardon, sir. I beg your pardon. I'm sorry, but I'm new. Can you repeat that?" And I think a lot of people, like in India, it's very common to ask people to, not feel hesitant about approaching people. But I think that's not the culture everywhere. So he got a bit annoyed that I was asking him again and again, and he turned to my friend and he said, "She will not be able to survive in England. She can't speak English." And my friend was shocked. He told him that, "Oh God, she has a degree in English. So she has studied English, so she probably knows more than you." But it's just a matter of accent. In fact, to your surprise, or I don't know, you might be informed already, the first department of English literature was first found in India, in Bombay actually, because we were colonized by the British at that time. And in the 19th century, in Britain, in most of England, English was not considered a language worthy enough to be studied. Like English literature, they were still studying Greek and Latin. So Indians are actually scientifically supposed to have the most perfect accent, or accent is the wrong word. I think the perfect pronunciation of English, which is without an accent actually. So it's funny when he said that, but I take it with a pinch of salt, because I have maintained what a lot of people might say my Indian accent or a Hindi accent. I don't know.
And is there something you still find difficult? Maybe emotional speech when you speak English? Is there something you struggle
No, I
with?
mean, I think over time I have become very well versed in English in my head now. In fact, it's difficult for me now to express myself entirely in one language. I think it flows from Hindi to English and Urdu and back to English.
A combination of...
Yeah, it's a combination of languages, and I think that's just an expression of who I am. I have grown up with these two languages. I was in school assemblies every day. We were made to read out a passage from the Bible. As much as I remember all my mantras from home, so it is a part of my identity now. I don't try to fit into either mold. I think it's a melange, and that's how I feel comfortable as well.
And do you feel that your identity is being transformed when you're using English rather than your native language? How
You know,
do
it does.
feel?
It does. I often feel, and this is just an impression, an observation, and I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong. But I do feel that especially when I'm outside of India, or even in India, many a times when I'm just sitting and I'm not speaking, and people may have a different impression of me, but as soon as I start speaking in English, I see their reaction change sometimes. Like I said, that English across the world is considered now to be a superior language. So if you are able to speak well, or I don't know if I speak well, but almost decent in English, suddenly like people take notice of you. So yes, I have observed that. I've seen that happen many a times.
And what has your experience been here in the United States so far in terms of using English?
I think a lot of people were surprised right from the airport. But I've got that a lot, that you speak English very well. But then I think that comment comes from an ignorance that Indians don't speak English. I know of very many people who speak much better than me, whose grammar is perfect, whose vocabulary is fantabulous. So I take that with a pinch of salt. But yes, people have told me, oh, you're very articulate. Oh, so I realize that for a lot of people, speaking in English is a skill that they have to acquire. Whereas I was lucky enough to just learn it as a part of my school curriculum.
And can you tell what you are doing here, what you are here for in the United States? What you will be doing
so
here?
I'm on a Fulbright like you, and I'm studying higher education, particularly focusing on higher education administration policy and research. That has been my field of work for about 4.5 years in India. And so I'm at University of Columbia, Teachers College.
Yeah, congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. To you too.
Yeah, and finally, can you give some tips to people trying to learn English? What are your tips to acquiring good English?
I think the easiest way to really learn English is to find a way to feel comfortable in the language yourself. I realized the moment I made it my own was the time when I started feeling comfortable, and automatically I started doing well. I had a fear of public speaking at one point, I remember. And another, if you allow me the time, I was in school, and we were auditioning for a debate competition, and most of my teachers knew me at that time, and one of the teachers suggested that I should be selected for the competition, and the other teacher said, no, not her, she will not be able to speak. And that was the turning point, because I said, oh my God, she's right. I will not be able to speak. So I set myself a task, and I said maybe next year I will make it a point to audition, and I did, and I got selected. And with a lot of encouragement from a teacher, I was able to do very well. So ever since then, the fear of public speaking has vanished. But I realized that speaking in general, in whichever language, evolves from your own personal style. The moment you stop emulating someone else, even if it is your teacher who has your best interest their heart, their style may be different from yours. And the moment you understand what is yours, you don't have to be loud, or your pronunciation need not be like your teachers or what you hear. But in your head, it has to be perfect. And once that comfort level with the language is there, I think you will be very confident, and you will do just fine.
Yes,
so
you
those
must
are my tips.
set your own individual goals, and you'll get there.
Yeah, you must set your own individual goals and make it your own. Don't see it as a language which is foreign or outside of yourself, because we often do that, and then we start feeling underconfident, and then it's downhill from there.
Yes,
So just make it your own, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, so thank you for your time, and
You are
good luck
welcome.
to you here in the United States. It's so great to meet you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking
Yeah,
to you.
thank you. Bye.
Bye.